Welcome back, everyone. Ready for part 2 of our deep dive into current affairs. We're looking at April 6th, 2025, and some of this might sound familiar, but hey, repetition helps for those UPSC exams, right?
Exactly. We're aiming to give you those core insights that really matter for your preparation, going beyond just the headlines. We've got a lot to cover today. Regional cooperation, border developments, some interesting legal principles for government appointments, international partnerships, even environmental law enforcement.
Okay, so let's kick things off with something relevant to our neighborhood, BIMSTEC. Just to recap, it was established back in '97 with the Bangkok Declaration. 7 members: Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Myanmar, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Thailand.
And it's been gaining momentum. The recent summit in Bangkok, the 6th one, saw the unveiling of the BIMSTEC Bangkok Vision 2030. This is their first ever strategic plan, aiming to create what they call a pro-BIMSTEC by 2030.
Yeah.
Prosperous, resilient, and open. It's all about deeper economic integration, better connectivity across the Bay of Bengal, and stronger human security.
Yeah, and speaking of connectivity, they signed a pretty significant agreement on maritime transport cooperation. Sounds like a big deal for regional trade.
Oh, absolutely. The main goal is to boost maritime connections between South and Southeast Asia. It's not just about faster shipping, it's about making the entire logistics process more efficient and ultimately reducing trade costs.
Now, it seems like India is really stepping up within BIMSTEC. What are some of the key initiatives they're leading?
Well, for one, India is planning to establish BIMSTEC centers of excellence. These will be hubs for sharing knowledge and research. Focus areas will be things like disaster management, sustainable maritime transport, which makes sense given that agreement, traditional medicine, and even agriculture.
So sort of becoming resource centers for the whole group makes sense. And there's also this initiative called BODHI, right?
Yes, BODHI stands for BIMSTEC, for Organized Development of Human Resource Infrastructure. It's all about youth empowerment through skills development. They're planning to offer training and scholarships for professionals, students, even researchers across all the member states.
Investing in the future, essentially. And what about digital initiatives within BIMSTEC? India seems to be active on that front, too.
That's right. India has proposed a pilot study to assess the need for digital public infrastructure across BIMSTEC. Think of it as a way to improve access to services and promote digital inclusion across the region.
So it's not just economics and infrastructure. There's a focus on building those people-to-people connections as well.
Absolutely. India is actually set to host the first ever BIMSTEC Games in 2027. That's a fantastic way to build goodwill and strengthen ties at a more personal level. And on the business side, there's a push to establish a BIMSTEC Chamber of Commerce, and they're even planning a BIMSTEC Business Conclave.
So a lot of action coming out of that 6th BIMSTEC summit. Now, for our listeners, the UPSC aspirants, why should they really care about BIMSTEC? What's its relevance for India today?
It's a very valid question. Firstly, BIMSTEC offers a platform for quicker decision-making compared to some larger regional groups. And it fits perfectly with India's strategic goals, especially the Act East policy. It's all about better connectivity for trade and security, especially in the Indian Ocean, especially with China's growing influence.
Okay, so it's a key part of India's outreach to its neighbors in the East. Got it. Now, let's shift gears a bit and look inwards. The cabinet recently approved the Vibrant Villages Program 2, building on the first phase. What's the overall objective here?
The Vibrant Villages Program, or VVP2, is directly linked to India's Viksit Bharat at 2047 vision. They want to make our land borders not just secure, but vibrant, self-sufficient, with thriving communities. It's a continuation of what they started with VVPI, which focused on the northern borders.
So what's different this time around with VVP2?
Well, for one, it's a central sector scheme. The funding comes entirely from the central government, unlike VVPI, which was a centrally sponsored scheme where both the center and states contributed.
Makes sense. And the geographical scope is broader, too, right?
Exactly. VVP2 targets villages along all our international land borders, that's 17 states and union territories. They are, however, excluding the northern border blocks. Those were covered under VVPPI in 2023-24.
And the focus goes beyond just infrastructure.
Right. They want to improve living standards, create livelihood opportunities, but there's also a strong emphasis on security. They want to control cross-border crime and use local populations as sources of information.
So what kind of concrete initiatives are we talking about here?
Infrastructure is a big part of it. Roads, housing, sanitation, drinking water, even smart classrooms. They're emphasizing all-weather road connectivity through the PMGSYY. And there's a focus on local economies. They're supporting cooperatives, self-help groups, and designing specific programs for sustainable income generation.
So a holistic approach. And they're aiming to make sure existing welfare schemes reach everyone in these villages.
That's the idea, yes. Plus, they're also promoting local culture and tourism, organizing fairs, festivals, awareness campaigns, even National Day celebrations. And to make sure everything runs smoothly, they're using the PM Gati Shakti platform for project monitoring and coordination.
It's interesting that they're putting so much emphasis on border areas now. It reminds me of those earlier initiatives.
You're right. There's been a series of initiatives over the years. The Border Area Development Program back in the 80s, then the Model Village Initiative in the 2000s, and then the Smart Model Village Development Concept in 2015.
Okay, moving on to something completely different. The Supreme Court recently laid down some important principles for government appointments.
Yes, the case was State of West Bengal versus Baishakhi Bhattacharya Chatterjee. The court upheld the quashing of about 25,000 staff appointments made by the West Bengal School Selection Commission back in 2016.
So what were these key principles the court established?
The first one is that if an inquiry finds evidence of widespread fraud in the selection process, the entire exam result can be canceled. The court referred to the Sachin Kumar and others versus DSSSB judgment. But they also added an important point. If it's possible to separate the candidates who were involved in the malpractice, they should do that.
That seems fair. What were the other principles?
The second principle is that any decision to cancel the whole process has to be based on solid evidence from a thorough investigation. The third principle is about the level of proof required. It doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt, like in criminal cases. Instead, they use a preponderance of probability standard.
So basically showing that it's more likely than not that irregularities happened.
Exactly. And the fourth principle is that if they prove widespread manipulation, the integrity of the entire process is paramount, even if it means some innocent candidates might be affected. They based the last three principles on their ruling in the 2021 state of Tamil Nadu and another versus a Kalamani case.
Interesting. And what about those affected? Do they get individual notices and hearings?
The court said individual notices and hearings might not be practical or necessary if there's clear evidence of large-scale problems. They referenced the Bihar School Examination Board versus Subhas Chandra Sinha and others case. Remember, they didn't cancel the NEET UG 2024 exam in the Vanshika Yadav case because there wasn't enough evidence of widespread irregularities.
It seems like they're applying these principles carefully depending on the specific situation. Now, let's look at international news. India and Thailand just announced a strategic partnership. What does that actually mean in international relations?
It's not as formal as a treaty alliance, but it signifies a deeper level of cooperation based on shared goals. Security is usually a big part of it, but it often extends to trade, economics, technology. In this case, it shows how India and Thailand are aligning on several key issues.
What are the factors that make this particular partnership significant?
Well, both countries are committed to a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. They also support ASEAN centrality. And strategically, Thailand is India's maritime neighbor, and they both want regional stability. Plus, their foreign policies complement each other. India's Act East policy and Thailand's Look West policy.
Okay, so a natural partnership. And were there any specific agreements signed apart from the partnership declaration?
Yes, several memoranda of understanding were signed covering various sectors. They'll be cooperating on the National Maritime Heritage Complex at Lothal and on the development of India's Northeast region. And they've agreed to set up an India-Thailand consular dialogue to make it easier for people to travel between the countries.
Smart move. And what about the economic side of things?
They're looking into setting up a system for settling trade transactions using their own currencies. On trade in general, their bilateral trade was around $15 billion in 2023-24. They also conduct joint military exercises like Exercise Maitri and Indo-Thai Corpat, showing growing security cooperation.
Now let's talk about environmental protection. The Supreme Court has ordered a probe into violations of forest and wildlife laws in Tamil Nadu's Agassiamalai landscape. What's the main issue here?
It's about alleged encroachment on lands known as Singampati Zaman Forest lands. They were cleared for plantations like tea, coffee, and rubber. Later, in 1978, this area became part of the Kalakad Mandantarai Reserved Forest. And then, in 2007, it was designated as a core critical tiger habitat and eventually a wildlife sanctuary and tiger reserve in 2012.
And what did the Supreme Court say in its order?
In the case of A. John Kennedy versus State of Tamil Nadu and others, The court emphasized the importance of forests. They called them the lungs of the ecosystem and talked about how deforestation affects climate change and biodiversity. They even mentioned that data from the Environment Ministry shows about 13,000 square kilometers of forest land in India is encroached upon.
So a serious issue. And they also talked about tiger conservation.
Yes, they highlighted the importance of a healthy tiger population for the environment. They even quoted a line from the T.N. Godavarman case. The tiger perishes without the forest, and the forest perishes without its tigers. They also endorsed an ecocentric approach, meaning prioritizing the entire ecosystem, not just human needs. They refer to their judgment in State of Telangana versus Mot, Abdul Qasim from this year.
Okay, so the well-being of the whole environment is crucial. Can you tell us a bit more about the Agastya Malai landscape itself?
Sure, it's in the southern Western Ghats in both Tamil Nadu and Kerala. It's known for its biodiversity. There's the Periyar Tiger Reserve, the Srivilliputhur Grizzled Squirrel Wildlife Sanctuary, and the Megamalai and Thirunelveli Wildlife Sanctuaries in Tamil Nadu. Then there are the Shendurni, Papara, and Nayar Wildlife Sanctuaries in Kerala. 14 rivers, including the Thamirabarai, flow through this area. And importantly, the Agastya Malai Biosphere Reserve is part of UNESCO's Man and Biosphere program.
Now, this case raises the question of how forests are classified and protected in India. Can you give us a quick overview?
Under the India Forest Act of 1927 and the various state forest acts, forests are classified as reserved forests, protected forests, and unclassed forests. Reserved forests have the highest level of protection, then protected forests. And unclassed forests have varying degrees of protection depending on the state.
And then there's the Forest Conservation Act of 1980.
Exactly. That act requires government approval before any forest land is used for non-forest purposes. And for tiger conservation, the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 has different classifications for areas within tiger reserves. Core or critical tiger habitats are strictly protected, while buffer or peripheral areas allow for some human activity while still trying to protect the habitat.
All right, let's go through some other news items quickly. First up, the Lok Sabha has been adjourned sine die. What does that mean?
It means the Lok Sabha has been adjourned without a fixed date for the next meeting, so the budget session is over. The presiding officer announces this, and then the president officially ends the session with a notification called prorogation.
And what about all the pending bills and stuff?
Most bills that were introduced but not passed stay alive and can be taken up in the next session. But things like questions and motions usually lapse.
Next, we have some exciting news about indigenous technology. Hanso 3, NG.
Yeah, CA Arnell has signed a deal with a private company to manufacture the Hansa trainer aircraft in India. This is the first time an aircraft will be made here using entirely Indian technology. The Hansa 3 NG has a modern Rotax engine, can fly for 7 hours, has a range of 620 nautical miles, and a top speed of 98 knots.
Impressive. Moving on to Greenland, there have been some interesting developments there.
Denmark's prime minister has rejected the idea of the U.S. annexing Greenland. But she did say they want to work more closely on defense in the Arctic.
For those who need a geography refresher, where exactly is Greenland?
It's the world's largest island in the North Atlantic, near Canada and Iceland. Most of it is inside the Arctic Circle, and 80% of it is covered by a massive ice sheet. Greenland's strategically important because of the growing competition in the Arctic. It has potential for shipping routes, and there are also resources like rare earth elements, oil, gas, fresh water, and fisheries.
Now, there's a lot of talk about the One Health approach these days.
It's an important approach, focusing on the connection between human, animal, and environmental health. The ICMR has started a study using this approach to look at the spread of diseases from animals to humans, especially in places where people interact closely with birds.
So it's about understanding that human health is linked to the health of everything around us.
Exactly. And India has a national One Health mission to coordinate efforts in this area.
On a later note, there are some efforts to grow tulips in India.
Yes, CSR IM in Jammu is working on that. Tulips are originally from Central Asia and Turkey. They're known for their beautiful colors. They need well-drained soil and specific temperatures to grow. You usually plant them in autumn in cold climates. The Indira Gandhi Memorial Tulip Garden in Srinagar is the largest tulip garden in Asia, showing that they can grow well in certain parts of India.
There's also some news about the Kokhraj Bongshi community in Assam.
The Assam cabinet has decided to drop cases against members of this community that were pending in foreigners' tribunals. The Kokhraj Bongshi people have a long history going back to the Kamada Kingdom. They speak the Rajbangshi language, also called Kamtapuri. They mainly follow Hinduism, but some are Christians.
And lastly, the Quad group has been involved in some humanitarian work.
Yes, after the earthquake in Myanmar, the Quad, which consists of Australia, India, Japan, and the U.S., issued a joint statement offering help. They have a framework for humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the Indo-Pacific region. They came together after the 2004 tsunami and formalized their HADR guidelines in 2022.
Their goal is to strengthen the region's ability to respond to disasters and improve cooperation between the member countries. Now, on a cultural note, the Indian Prime Minister visited the Wat Pho Temple in Bangkok.
It's a very famous Buddhist temple, known for its huge reclining Buddha statue, which is 46 meters long. It's a royal temple and is considered the birthplace of traditional Thai medicine and massage. It's even been called Thailand's first university because of its role in preserving traditional knowledge. King Rama renovated it, and King Rama III expanded it.
So, another jam-packed session. We covered regional cooperation with BIMSTEC, border area development with VBP2, those Supreme Court rulings on government appointments, India's new strategic partnership with Thailand, the environmental issues in the Agastyamalai land state, and a bunch of other important news. Phew!
And it's all connected. It's important to see how these different areas relate to each other for your UPSC preparation.
So, here's something for you to think about. We've talked about regional cooperation like BIMSTEC and securing our own borders with VBP2. How do you think these two things might influence India's role in the world and its development in the future? It's a complex issue with lots to consider.
Definitely a lot to unpack there.
Don't forget to like this deep dive and subscribe to our channel for more UPSC-focused analyses. See you in the next one.